we're going to look at the role of the large intestine in the absorption of nutrients and water, and also at the defecation reflex. So, of course, we all have intestinal gases, and they come from bacterial fermentation in the colon, but of course from swallowed air as well when you're eating. Eruption is, of course, burping to remove air from the stomach. There is actually very little gas in the small intestine because it passes that the colon or is absorbed. And just to put it into context, the average person will swallow about 500 milliliters of air during an average meal. So you're taking quite a lot of air with each meal. Flatus, well, that's mainly derived from your colonic bacteria. Of course, it depends on the type of food that's eaten, and it has the characteristics of the colonic bacteria that are present. So we're now going to take a little look at that, the large intestine, and in particular the junction between the small and the large intestine. So the small intestine joins the colon at the cecum. So you can see that into this little portion here. You can see the duodenum, eventually forming the jejunum, and then into the ileum. And then the ileum empties into the cecum, which is the large intestine. And the cecum is a blind-ended pouch below the junction of the small and large intestines at that ileocecal valve. And when your contents from the small intestine push forward, they open that valve. But of course, that valve is forcibly closed by any backward movement. So it's stopping that reflux back again. The appendix, just so you know about the appendix, of course, that is lymphoid tissue that houses lymphocytes, but you can do without it. So the large intestine receives about 500 mils of chyme per day. Most of that chyme coming into the large intestine is food that's indigestible. So the enzymes can't break it down. It may be bile components, and it's a lot of water. The colon has functions, and those functions are to extract more water, so it's concentrating feces matter. It extracts more electrolytes. And of course, we also have those bacterial flora that are there, those colonic bacteria, and they ferment cellulose, which is indigestible by our enzymes, and undigested carbohydrates. And that goes on to produce the gas, the flatus. Bacteria that are present there help to synthesize your B vitamins and your vitamin K, which are then further absorbed in the colon. And of course, remaining content is eliminated as feces. And just like in the small intestine, you're getting contractions and relaxation of smooth muscle. These are called haustral contractions, and they occur about every 30 minutes or so, and they just serve to shuffle the contents back and forth, which exposes the colonic contents to the absorptive mucosal surfaces for absorption, for example. And of course, the gases that we talked about, well, they usually take on the characteristics of the food that has been consumed, and we'll all be fully aware of that. I don't need to go into any more details on that. So how does absorption actually occur? Well, the luminal surface is much smoother than in the small intestine, and therefore, by its very nature, has less absorptive surface area than the small intestine. So you can see the small intestine on the left-hand side with all the villi, and there'll be microvilli there as well. And of course, on the right-hand side, you can see the colon. So it's clear as day that there's a much smaller surface area there. There's absorption of sodium that occurs by active transport. Chloride follows down an electrochemical gradient, and water follows down an osmotic gradient. So what's happening in the large intestine? Well, about 3 or 4 times a day, we get what are called mass movements, and these propel feces forwards. So in this case, the ascending and the transverse, so the sideways colon, contract simultaneously, and it drives feces about 1/3 to 3/4 of the length of the colon in a few seconds. So food enters into the stomach. This triggers your gastroileal reflex. And so this hence essentially moves food from the small intestine, which is present here, into the colon. We also get gastrin that is being produced because of food entering the stomach, and this triggers the gastrocolic reflex. And the gastrocolic reflex is movement of the colon. So remember, the gastroileal reflex is movement of food in the ileum, and the gastrocolic reflex is movement of food within the colon. And then it reaches the end point, and that triggers defecation. So therefore, when a new meal enters the digestive tract, there are a variety of reflexes that are initiated, so the gastroileal reflex and the gastrocolic reflex, to move the existing contents further along the tract to make way for the incoming food. So now we'll move on to the defecation reflex. And so we now know that food has now, or waste products, I should say, have made their way to the end of the rectum, and the resulting distension of that rectum stimulates stretch receptors of the rectal wall. This causes the internal anal sphincter, which is made up of smooth muscle and is innervated by your enteric neurons, to relax, and the colon to contract more vigorously. And this, of course, is trying to release the waste product, the feces, out of the anus. And if the external anal sphincter is relaxed, which is, of course, made up of skeletal muscle, so therefore is innervated by your somatic efferent neurons and is under conscious control, conscious voluntary control. So if that anal sphincter muscle is relaxed, then defecation occurs. It's assisted by simultaneous voluntary contraction of the abdominal muscles, and then you release feces, which is composed of about 67% water and therefore 33% solids, much of which is bacteria. So around about 10 to 15% or so is bacteria. Hence why you need to wash your hands. So now we're just going to touch towards the end on the age-related changes to the GI tract and what happens because of changes to smooth muscle levels, for example. There are lots of changes that affect digestion, absorption, and other processes. So as you start to get older, your epithelial stem cell division rates decrease. So it's your epithelial stem cells that go on to make new epithelial cells within your GI tract. So therefore, the epithelium is becoming more susceptible to damage by abrasion, by acid and enzymes. Peptic ulcers are more likely as a tissue repair becomes less efficient and slower. In the mouth, the esophagus, and in the anus, the epithelium become thinner and more fragile. Smooth muscle tone also starts to decrease. So general motility and contractions are weaker. You may be straining to eliminate compacted fecal matter, stresses those less resilient blood vessels. You may get weakening of muscular sphincters. So motility, a decreased motility and weaker contractions obviously leads to slow fecal movements and therefore constipation. Straining and therefore stressing on blood vessels can lead to hemorrhoids. And of course, weakening of muscular sphincters can lead to esophageal reflux and heartburn. So the cumulative damage starts to become apparent as we age as well. So you may get gradual loss of teeth due to dental caries or gingivitis. So gingivitis is gum inflammation, and dental caries are teeth breakdown, often due to bacteria. So basically you're looking at cavities there. Toxins that you may be taking, such as alcohol, can lead to liver cirrhosis and cancer. Alcohol and smoking, of course, can both also lead to mouth and throat cancers. Other cancers, such as stomach and colon cancer, frequency rise as we get older as well. And cancer is more common because of the high cell division and associated potential mutations that occur within the GI tract. So I'd like you to just, when we've talked a little bit about this already, I'd like you to just tell me the consequences of each of the age-related effects there. So press pause and have a think about what the consequences are in each case, and then we'll go through it. So you have decreased GI motility and contraction strength because of a lessening of the amount of smooth muscle that you have. Consequences, of course, can lead to potentially constipation. You may have decreased muscle tone and straining. The straining, obviously, that may then go on to lead to hemorrhoids. And weakening sphincters, of course, that may lead to reflux and heartburn.